Star Trek Attack Wing, the Next Generation Series OP Overview, Tin Man. Following the path of the Vega 9 probe, your fleet has traveled to the Beta Stromgen star system in order to try to make contact with an alien organism referred to as Tin Man. Tin Man appears to be a living starship and is orbiting a star that is going to supernova. As you ready yourselves to make contact, your fleet is set upon by an enemy fleet, which is also trying to make contact with Tin Man. Will you be the first to make contact? Will you even bother trying?
That really is the question, because once you start reading the rules, you very quickly realize that Tin Man is going to be a pain in the butt in order to really get a hold of. And when you look down at the very bottom at the objective portion, you realize it's just not worth it.
Yeah, 5 points if you make contact with Tin Man, 10 if you're the first to do it, so 15 on offer.
That's not even enough to replace the booster ship, let alone really make an impact in the game.
Yeah.
Not to mention that you're taking massive damage for being anywhere near Tin Man if attacks are going on, and that's just a recipe for an ignored objective.
You triple those points? Maybe we have something.
That's actually what I was thinking. I think that doubling the points gets you somewhere, and tripling the points gets you to the point where if you can make first contact, which is going to take a lot of action economy, a lot of dedication, a big gamble, now you've gotten it to the point where maybe it's a worthwhile objective. However, when I think of tripling the points, really makes me worried about how fleet points are going to break down in the situation where someone's intentionally being kept alive in order to give the controlling player a chance to make contact.
So you're saying that somebody would toy with their opponent?
Not even toy with them, just completely ignore them once they're down to one crippled dinker ship, and spend the rest of the time working on Tin Man while the opponent is effectively out of action.
Call them Sparky.
Yeah, just leave some horribly critically wounded ship just piddling around, hopefully have like a warp core breach on there so they can only perform one maneuvers, and just finish contacting Tin Man before you clear out the opposing fleet for a 165, or even all the way up to a 205 points if you count the 40 booster and a 120 build.
Yeah, like we do. Yeah, I think it's something you got to kind of play with and decide what works for your venue, but 15 points isn't enough to incentivize me to go after Tin Man.
As we kind of just went over, 45 points might be too much, so you've got to find the proper balance point for it. It's very clear, to me at least, that the points you have on it now are not enough, but something like tripling it may be too much. So you've got to find the sweet spot somewhere in the middle there without making it an ignorable objective.
Yeah. So, with that in mind, let's actually talk about how this scenario gets set up.
Oh, there's a lot of fun things that are implied by this scenario, and a lot of fun ways to take advantage of that, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah. So, 2-player, you get your full range 1 anywhere, all 3 feet of the board. And then we put a planet range 1 away from the west edge. I say west with air quotes because nobody's getting a compass out. And then you put an objective token range 3 away from that same edge of the board. So it's kind of like range 1 from the edge to the planet, and then you got a planet, and then you got range 1-ish from the planet to the objective token.
I must admit, it does entertain me, the idea of someone breaking out a compass in the middle of space.
Yeah. So what it really is that the planet is a star.
Yes, and this star is, as you'd imagine, a great big ball of fire that you don't want to touch, because if you overlap this star, you die. That's it. Nothing special. You just lose. Your ship is blown up.
Which I love. If that's not potential for lure or faked messages or all of those other cards that change your opponent's maneuver, I don't know what is.
Hard maneuver control is going to be a thing in this, not only because of the fact that you can move someone into the star, but also for the fact that getting them close to Tin Man is going to wreak havoc on their systems.
Yeah. And to counter that, anything that lets you change your maneuver is going to be a very good thing. So that's like your Uhuras of the world.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of fun abilities that you can use in order to manipulate your movement after the fact, and Uhura kind of does that better than most.
Yeah.
So I would highly rate her in a scenario like this where you know your opponent is going to be messing with you.
Yeah. So Tin Man is the objective token, and why they couldn't give us a new objective token featuring Tin Man, I don't know, and I really wish that they had. I think they missed the boat here, but nevertheless, here you go. Tin Man is a 0055, but don't take that 0 primary weapon value for what it is, because don't worry, it'll fight back. Tin Man cannot move, can't perform actions, or attack, but if it is attacked, it immediately retaliates.
And it is important to note that this retaliation is not an attack against your ship. This is just dice being rolled that will result in damage. There's no defending from this. There's no modifying these results. You're just getting hit.
Yeah. So Tin Man rolls 6 attack dice, and then you suffer normal damage for every hit or crit result from these dice.
It's delicious. Deliciously painful, but pretty fun nonetheless.
But wait, there's more. You then roll 3 attack dice, and every other ship within range 1 to 2 of Tin Man suffers normal damage for every hit or crit on those dice.
If you're not cooking something up to really take advantage of the fact that anybody in range of Tin Man is going to be getting hit by these constant area of effect blasts that are effectively cloaked mines, well, I think you're building this scenario wrong.
Yeah. Also, if an attack is made within range 1 to 2 of Tin Man, either the attacking or defending ship is within range 1 to 2 of Tin Man. An energy wave is also emitted from Tin Man, and that is 2 attack dice.
Still extremely effective. It can really get work done, and since you're not rolling defense dice against this, you're not defending against it, there's no way you can really mitigate this damage effectively. This is a really interesting objective, and because it's so damaging to be near it, that's the reason you really need to buff the points that the objective is worth, since at this point, everyone sane is thinking, I'm never getting near this. Tin Man's way too dangerous. Why would I go there for 15 points?
Yeah, that other side of the board sure looks really good.
And that's not even making mention of the fact that the action economy required to actually make contact with Tin Man is absolutely preposterous.
Oh yeah. So, speaking of that action economy, you can attempt to make contact. If one of your ships that is within range 1 of Tin Man performs a scan action, instead of placing the scan token beside it, you may place a mission token on that ship's ship card. A ship within range 1 of Tin Man may perform the following action. Roll 1 attack die for each mission token on your ship card. If you roll at least 2 hit results, you have made contact with Tin Man. Remove all the mission tokens from that ship card and place one of them beside your ship cards. This represents that your fleet has made contact with Tin Man. So it's at least 3 actions and a 25% roll to make contact with Tin Man.
We're talking about rolling 2 hit results, not even 2 hit or crit results. This is worse than 25%. This is less than 15%, since you're getting only 3 out of 8
right
on both dice.
So that's 9 out of 64?
That is really, really terrible odds, and this is the whole objective. You're doing this all for 15 points.
Oh yeah, that's barely 14% odds. I don't like those odds.
Exactly my point. If you're considering that you already have to perform 2 scans and then can start using the action economy to try for making contact, it's just not going to happen. You have to be within range 1 the entire time you're doing this, so you either need to be basically standing still or flying a very tight circle, which means you're using a small ship that's maneuverable, which means you're not actually going to be able to soak the damage that you're going to be taking from the Tin Man waves.
Yeah, you're going to be dead.
It's just like the perfect storm of ignore this objective that I think can be changed to a positive if you actually make it worthwhile to stick by Tin Man long enough to make contact. But it is going to be a very big gimmick setup needed to take advantage of Tin Man and survive.
And that's the other thing. You have to do the scan action, not place a scan token. So that limits some options, some cute options about combos.
Mm-hmm. You can't use data. You can't use things like
Mirror Ogawa.
Mirror Ogawa, more than meets the eye. You actually have to be performing the action itself.
Now, things like Picard 9, Captain Spock, those still work, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
But it still, is that really the best use of that second action for your ship? I don't think so.
I don't think it is.
You know, I take those bonus actions because I want better action economy. I want target lock battle stations on my ship, or I want to take battle stations evade to have like super defense, or battle stations evade for offense and defense.
Mm-hmm. And so if you are building with Tin Man in mind, you've got to be getting some sort of action economy going in order to even make a go of it, which directly translates into heavy investment, which directly translates into you're going to have a weaker rest of your fleet.
Yeah. That's the thing, right? You kind of go, okay, I'm just never going to attack Tin Man. Well, good. You shouldn't.
Tin Man is not the actual target here. However, it's beyond not wanting to attack Tin Man. It's I don't want to get close to Tin Man. Going anywhere near him seems like a pretty legitimate death sentence.
If you roll 3 dice and you don't do anything to them, you're kind of thinking, okay, 1, 2 hits. It's one of those 2. Very rarely are you going to see 3 hits come against you. But it happens.
Mm-hmm.
But how many times are you going to let that happen?
Exactly, because every time you're getting attacked, Tin Man is throwing out another energy wave, you're suffering extra dice that you didn't need to be defending against, and you're not even technically defending, so you're not getting any of your defense dice back at this. That means that cloaking ships are a really big no-no for going anywhere nearby, because there, any sort of damage on your hull on a cloaking ship is exponentially more painful.
Oh yeah, improved deflector screens isn't going to help you.
You're not defending. You can't actually cancel any of those results. It's super painful. Very, very few actual damage mitigating cards are able to deal with damage that comes from things that aren't attacks.
Yeah, even the ISS Defiant doesn't help because that says when you suffer damage from an attack.
The ISS Defiant, that one Vulcan ship that cancels damage, the Bioship Beta, none of it can actually stop the damage coming off of Tin Man.
Yeah.
Also, another blow against cloaking ships is that pretty much no cloaking ships come with the scan action on their action bar. Sure, there's the new HMS Bounty that can get the cloak and scan together, but that's a very niche ship, which might be something you want to build towards, but at the same time, chances are if a ship can't run scans natively, it's not worth it to build it into this list, specifically because of how damaging Tin Man's going to be against it, and the extra points you're going to need to spend to get it to the point that it can use scans. Cloaking in general is just going to be a bad idea around Tin Man.
Yeah. There's really no good defense against Tin Man, is what we're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Just, if you go near, prepare to take damage.
And speaking of prepare to take damage, if you are not planning on going near Tin Man, there's an awfully large assortment of ways that you can take advantage of the damage Tin Man is going to be putting out to really make your opponent regret their decision to go anywhere near that godforsaken little objective token next to that star. Specifically, I'm thinking of multiple attack options, because it doesn't matter if it's just one ship making the attack. Every time an attacking or defending ship is within range 1 to 2 of Tin Man's firing off another energy wave. Think about the Coronac.
Oh, yeah.
Targeting 2 ships, boom, boom. Now you've got Tin Man throwing 4 dice against both of those ships that are getting attacked. Think about something fun.
Sphere 4270.
What's that?
The named Borg sphere. It can split its fire. That's even better.
You need to be careful about it, because you are getting close because you're Borg, but at the same time, that's very much a viable option. Now, I might be tipping my hand here because I am a devious builder and I have plans for this build, but think of the Xindi. Think of the prototype weapon. I'm not talking about Weapon Zero. I'm talking about the prototype weapon. Yeah. Slap that on a tiny Xindi ship. Throw the, whatchamacallit, that one Dominion talent that allows you to attack at Captain Skill 10.
Oh, yeah.
And make like 3 attacks, one against Tin Man, one against another target, and one against another target. Now Tin Man's throwing 7 uncancelable dice against everything within range 2. And that's a fun time if ever there was one.
If your venue is smart and has reduced the cost of Cube 112, that's the original Big Borg cube, to match the cost of the new Big Borg cube, bringing it down from 82 points to 52 points. The named ability on Cube 112 is, instead of making a normal attack with your primary weapon, you may fire it up to 4 different ships at range 1 to 2, with 4 attack dice against each ship. If you do so, you spend a drone token for each of these attacks. That would be very nasty in this scenario.
If the opponent makes the mistake of putting more than 1 ship anywhere near Tin Man, say goodnight.
Yeah, if you want a fun time to run Cube 112, I think this might be the time.
I think there's always a fun time to run it. I think this is a fun time to run it as a legitimate gimmick rather than just for the sake of itself.
Yes. Yeah, all those split fire options, I think there's a home for them in this scenario.
Because every single attack against a ship in there, super damaging, and that's what you want. You don't even need quality on it because they're uncancelable. At least the energy waves coming out from the Tin Man are. So as long as you're throwing down those attacks, your opponent is going to be receiving hits most of the time.
Yeah, and of course anything that knocks their shields down beforehand is going to help. So projected stasis field is still strong. Gorn raiding party. Even the Vidian named ship is going to be good because that will disable shields. All those other things that will hurt their health ahead of time. If you know dice are coming in, that will give you a leg up on them.
In the off chance that you actually do want to remove Tin Man from the board and aren't actually planning on playing it as the objective, you don't really have many options, but they do exist. One of my personal favorites for actually diffusing Tin Man, as I'm going to call it, is going to be Matt Decker. The idea that you can just slap down damage onto Tin Man. It's not an attack, it's an ability. You're not triggering its wave. You're going to be able to slowly chunk its health through the shields. That seems like a viable option, especially because adding to its attack dice doesn't do anything since it never attacks in the first place.
Yeah. I'll buy that.
There are also a variety of other ships and characters that can deal damage to hull value behind shields. I'm thinking of crits from the Ferengi missile launcher, which also, shout out to them for being a multiple attack weapon right up next to Tin Man.
Yeah.
Throw that out, 1 attack against an opposing ship, 1 attack against Tin Man. That's 5 dice in addition to whatever your missile launcher attack is. That's just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Bring along Denatra to help with that. That's always a good thing.
On the off chance that you were thinking projected stasis field to kind of open up Tin Man to a big alpha strike, probably shouldn't bother because, again, its shields may be down, but it can still attack. It can still retaliate since it doesn't actually attack. The energy waves aren't an attack, and so projected stasis field isn't going to stop them. You're just going to have to bite the bullet if you actually want to take it off the map, or you're going to have to avoid it.
Yeah.
Which probably is the better option.
Plus, projected stasis field just so much better used against your opponent.
Mm-hmm. It's generally great to delete any target ship off the face of the map, and while it does leave you vulnerable, if you can maneuver it right, I think that it can do great things for you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's circle back.
Yes.
How many points is it going to take for you to want to go after Tin Man? Either to attack it and remove it from play so your opponent doesn't go after it, or for you to actually spin the actions and put a ship or more at risk.
If I'm going to even bother with this thing, first contact is going to have to be pretty important. I think that somewhere around 40 points is my sweet spot. That makes it worth about a booster ship. It is some investment, but maybe you've got a booster ship with scans that can kind of be a sacrificial lamb. Maybe you've got something that you don't really care about losing, or maybe a small dinker ship designed to be the designated driver for the for Tin Man, something like the Pasteur that has low offenses and defenses, but enough hull to soak the damage coming off of Tin Man. It's an option. At least makes it somewhat important to think about, and I think that's what could really make me want to come to it. And so my ideal would be contact with Tin Man at all is 20 points, and making first contact is an additional 20 points on top of that, because I don't want to make it so that the moment someone contacts Tin Man, it's now a dead objective, don't even bother. But at the same time, I still want to give first contact a reason to exist. I want to give you a reason to build with low captain skill or to take initiative for this.
Yeah, could see that. I'm with you. It's something we're definitely going to have to discuss and see what people have to say. But I'm definitely on board with saying 15 points total is not going to get it done, and it needs more incentive.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, most definitely. It's a fun objective.
Yeah, this has a lot of intrigue to it, and is making me go, okay, how mean are people going to be?
And the answer is extremely.
Yeah.
At least where I'm concerned. I don't know about you guys, but I am both going to be aiming to snag Tin Man for myself and making sure no one else wants to do anything with it at all ever.
Well, that's well put.
Two things I did want to bring up before we kind of close the discussion on Tin Man is that there is actually a small corridor behind the star if you want to get fancy with something. Now, it's important to note that if you fly a little bit to the left and fly off the board, you die, or if you fly a little bit to the right and fly into the sun, the star, you die. But if you can kind of thread the needle and go right on through, I think that coming around for a flanking attack on turn 3 or 4, once you've gone through that very narrow passageway, could be a very valuable tactic, just because people aren't going to be expecting it.
I foresee people crashing into each other as they push to make it through that corridor before the other person.
I'd be very interested to see if two people at the same time had the same idea, because I think Lure is going to be making a showing, and any ship going through that corridor that faces Lure is going to be put into the sun or into the or off the board, and so that kind of limits you to ships that only have green straits. I'm thinking something like the Jem'Hadar battleship, that really big brawler ship that's can only go straight on a green maneuver. And I think that if someone decides to build with that, they can actually sneak that through, because most people are going to be too worried about Lure to actually take the risk of setting up to go down that little corridor there.
Yeah.
Not to mention coming back on their flank with a 6 attack die ship that probably is going to figure out some way to hit perfect quality. That's pretty frightening.
And if not perfect quality, at least have good quality and some way of boosting their attack.
Exactly. The other fun thing about the scenario I wanted to bring up is that if you're counting inches and ignoring the little side corridor that's kind of reserved for big bruiser ships that only have green straits, the actual size of the map that isn't under threat, at least from a horizontal perspective, is very low. You've got the objective token being already placed range 3, so a foot off the side of the map. It's about 1 inch in diameter. It has range 2 extending off of that. So you've got 12 inches plus 8 inches plus 1 inch. That's 21 inches of coverage extending from one side of the map to the other, where if your opponent's anywhere within this area at about the halfway mark, they're going to be in threat and they're going to be vulnerable to the objective dealing more damage to you. If you've got a single cloaked mines, you can add another 9 inches of coverage for 30 out of the 36 inches of map space, basically being hazardous to the opponent. And if your venue, unlike ours, allows multiple cloaked mines, you can make sure that your opponent can't cross the halfway point without suffering for their decisions.
It's a nasty scenario in terms of board control.
Anytime you have an objective that kind of cuts the board in half, I'm always thinking about how to actually control the other half of the board. And cloak mines are a very mean way to do it, but very effectual at the same time.
They do it well.
There's never a bad time to hit your opponents with cloaked mines, to be honest. And that's why I think we've kind of respected their power enough to realize that they probably should be unique.
Yeah. That's a discussion for another day.
You're right. That's an entirely different topic. I just have to get a jibe in there.
You do.
Still salty, Todd. Still salty.
All right. There you go. So, we do have the Cairo, and that's a prize pack to talk about.
Yes.
People have heard me talk about it on the shipyard, but, I've had more time to kind of digest and mull over cards, and Craig here has had a chance to look at cards and share his perspectives. So,
being a fan of the Excelsior class ship, at least the way that Star Trek Attack Wing has designed it, I have a few things to say.
Yes.
Frankly.
So, let's start it off with the Cairo herself.
Being a 3/1/4 ship, her named ability doesn't really inspire me. All she gets is an extra defense die whenever defending with an aux power beside her. That's usable, but you're never really designing an Excelsior to be a defensive ship. You're building the Excelsior for that 180-degree arc. You've got a rear arc to play around with torpedoes if you want to. And you've got that perfect 3 primary weapons value for the Sakona into upgraded and Type 8 phaser combo that the Federation has access to. Yeah. And you're using it for the wonderful variety of crew, captains, and tech that Federation bring to the table. Defenses aren't really your primary concern, and if you have to take an auxiliary power to even get access to the named ability, you might not want to be looking at the Cairo as your Excelsior of choice.
Yeah. This is still my, number 4 Excelsior. I can't put it ahead of the Hood, the Lakota, or the Excelsior.
All of which are fantastic ships, by the way.
Yeah. Free scan, more attack dice, more attack dice against cloak ships, or conversion. Yeah, I'll take any of those above an additional extra defense die.
That said, 180-degree arc, always fun. It's just probably the named ability of the Cairo doesn't recommend it over the other Excelsiors that are already on offer, which really speaks to the strength of the class of ship, that having a 180-degree arc on 9 durability and a very diverse upgrade and action bar doesn't really get you too much love.
I didn't used to love the Excelsior, and now it's kind of hard to think back that far, because Excelsiors are a really solid, all-around utility ship.
They're a brawler, I'll tell you what.
I think it's when Type 8s came out that I went, oh, that's what they were always missing, a 4th attack die.
Amen. Once you can start boosting their attack dice up, you can make a lot of good use of 180-degree arc ships.
So, Edward Jellicoe, I want to get your thoughts on this. Skill 6 captain, with a talent 4 points. At any time, you may disable one of your tech or weapon upgrades to place an evade, scan, or battle station token beside your ship. You can only use this ability once per round.
I'm weirded out by it, because it seems very out of place, but at the same time, when you take him in conjunction with the fact that there's actually a lot of cheap weapons and tech available in the game, and he provides you what's essentially superior action economy, he actually turns out to be really fancy, especially if you start taking him out of faction, since you can do some really interesting setups using Edward Jellicoe. My one thing that I would say recommends him to me more than anything I just said is the fact that he doesn't actually take it as an action. Instead, you're just placing these things there. You're placing an evade, placing a scan, placing a battle station beside your ship. So if you've already taken that as an action, now you have a way to double up on specific tokens. Maybe you want to go a double scan, grenade sort of build. Maybe you want multiple evades to be just hyper defensive. Maybe you want any of these fun options. You can actually use him in conjunction with an advanced technology to disable your tech upgrade, grab one of these tokens, discard that tech upgrade, take a free action, and then use your normal action for whatever you'd like for what, again, essentially boils down to 3 actions in a turn.
Yeah. See, you're still taking this as our venue's take on at any time. The official ruling to at any time means you can only do this between phases in the game.
Which is still fine. You don't need to have these tokens with you in the activation phase. You can grab these before the...
Yeah, post-activation before combat. I mean, that's not a terrible time to use it, but you can't, instantaneously
Could you
react.
use it between the planning phase and the activation phase?
Yes. There you go. That is a between phasing, so...
There you go. So you could still do the combination with advanced technology, which I think is really cool, since advanced technology's biggest drawback is that it limits you to just that one free action.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There's a combo I hadn't thought of, so... I don't foresee Jellicoe becoming more widely used than Mr. Spock.
Really? I'm surprised by that, actually.
Because Mr. Spock just gives you that second action. And you don't have to take any other card, and you don't have to disable anything. Jellicoe has a point where he runs out of utility, whereas Spock, you can keep doing things forever.
I would agree with you, save for the fact that Jellicoe gives you battle stations instead of target locks, and I think that a lot of ships struggle to get the battle stations action, whereas no one really has an issue getting a target lock. Almost any ship that can have an offensive use, it has target lock on its bar, whereas very few cloaking ships have access to the battle stations action, and Edward Jellicoe is a way to get your cloaking ships into battle station economy.
Okay, Gul Dukat then. I mean, I know we're getting 1 point more expensive, but...
Mm-hmm. And you can also only run 1 Gul Dukat, and you can only run 1 of the Picard 9, so I'm just saying there is a role for Jellicoe, especially if you can get discounts on your weapons and tech upgrades, which is entirely possible with things like Sakona out there.
Sure, but,
Let me put it to you this way. How many times have you had 1 or 2 points to spare on your ship, and there's been a 1 or 2 point tech or weapon upgrade that would have slotted in there, and you wouldn't really have had a use for it? Jellicoe gives you a use for it, he adds to your action economy, and with Captain Skill 6, I find him respectable.
That is still assuming that I have a captain slot that I haven't already taken.
True enough.
So, a lot of times I build captain and ship first and then kind of fill the rest in. But, that's how I build.
Mm-hmm. Another interesting option is to run him alongside something that's already discarding the upgrade in question, like Ibex Dynasty. Now you're at least getting some extra value out of your weapon upgrade that you're discarding.
Oh,
Maybe
sure.
something like decoy instead, but the concept's the same. If you're already going to be discarding something, getting some extra action economy out of it doesn't hurt.
Oh, yeah, because you can discard something that's disabled, and then it works even better. So, yeah, I'm with you there. That's a great way to make it work. So, no qualms about that whatsoever.
I like you, Edward.
Somebody has to.
There you go. I'm okay if I'm that guy.
You be that guy. All right, our elite talent, Task Force. Action, choose a faction. All friendly ships within range 1 to 2 of your ship gain +1 attack die and roll +1 defense die against ships of that faction for this round.
If you're a faction pure player who likes Federation, and to be fair, most faction pure players should like Federation, then Task Force actually works out really nicely, since it's not locking you into focus firing on one ship.
Yeah.
Alternatively, if you're a player who is having struggles against a specific faction, such as Borg or Romulans, who
or species,
really just or species who just kind of seems to be beating up on you no matter how you build, maybe Task Force is your kind of pocket answer to a player who's really been getting you down, but because it locks you into only targeting a single faction, I don't rate it as being worth 5 points, especially because it's only 1 extra attack die as opposed to something bigger.
Well, it's 1 extra attack die for every other ship in your fleet that's within range 1 to 2.
I think it's the range 2 that actually makes it feasible, because otherwise I'd just go with Admiral Hayes and call it a day.
Yeah.
You're not discarding anything. You're not discarding anything here either, which is important. So you can actually slap this as a talent on a ship where you have already used up your Admiral slot and you still want to just have the action economy pouring into something useful. Maybe say you're using Admiral Gowron to give a Klingon ship perfect quality. You can slap this on a Dinker ship like a Romulan science vessel and still be credit to your team.
Yes. I'm just saying, I want Denatra and Admiral Hayes as my task force leader.
Oh goodness, if you can spend all the actions to make that happen, now you're getting a boost.
Main ship does task force, support ship triggers Admiral Hayes.
If you're facing Borg, that's 4 extra attack dice, and that is going to be tough to face.
Yeah. What excites me about Task Force is the campaign potential. I'm not in love with it for tournaments, but the different things you can do with it in scenario play are like, ooh.
I find that to be an interesting perspective, because usually when I think of campaign games, I'm not thinking about 4 or 5 ships all on a line. Now, I'm not saying that those can't be how you play a faction game, but when I think of a faction game, I'm thinking about like 2 or 3 ships that you're really focused on, and at that point, Task Force doesn't give you quite enough, for my money at least.
Well, so think about it this way. All of your ships just
all
have
friendly
to be
ships. That is not considering the own ship.
Your ships have to be close, but they could all be shooting at different target ships of the same faction.
Yes.
There are some missions where you are up against like 200 points of one faction. And so Task Force is almost a natural include in a scenario like that.
That I could get behind. If you have the proper gimmick setup that warrants it, Task Force can be exceptionally handy.
Yeah. And a little extra defense die here and there definitely doesn't hurt. I'm not saying it's the best.
The question is, does it warrant the 5 cost? And I would argue no, until we get to the point that it isn't a discard, and there's not a whole lot of talents that can be used as an action that don't discard themselves.
Yeah.
Doubly so for talents that actually boost the rest of your ships rather than your own.
Yeah. If this boosted your own ship as well, I think it would be perfect.
Yes.
Because I love that it's not that discard, it's not a disable, it's not time tokens, it's you can use it every single turn and you're good. But it doesn't help your own ship, and that's what makes it sting just a little bit.
Yes, being support fodder isn't necessarily the killing blow, but it doesn't help in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Okay. High-yield photon torpedoes.
I mean, I like photon torpedoes, and I like high-yield photon torpedoes, the resource. However, high-yield photon torpedoes, the upgrade, kind of loses the plot somewhere along the line.
Yeah. You can't fire them out of the rear arc.
Which is kind of the reason you bring torpedoes in the first place, is that you want to have an option for flying by your opponent and still maintaining combat effectiveness as you either take some time to turn around, or maybe your plan is to blitz straight past them and get out of their arc so you can fire out of your rear.
Mm-hmm. The fact that you only get one conversion kind of stings.
Especially when the high-yield photon torpedoes resource gave you a second reroll as an option, whereas this doesn't.
I would have liked them to give you a double conversion. That would have justified the high-yield portion of the card. Or some extra text, like, say, one of your crits that hits the shields becomes a normal hit to the hull.
Yeah, it just doesn't bring enough for what it's advertising. For another point on a torpedo, I'd probably go with quantum torpedoes over high yield.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm torn, because it does have that higher damage. It does have a possible conversion, and if you can get a reroll some other way, say like Dmitry Valtain or a captain like Razik, maybe high yield photon torpedoes are worthwhile.
Maybe. I could see Con 7 taking these and hiding them, and then they only cost 4 points.
That's fun.
But then there's still 4 points, and you're not hiding something else, but...
And I'd love it a lot more if, and this is a big one, but if it could be used from the rear arc, and I don't think that's a lot to ask of photon torpedoes.
No, it's not. It's really not.
Especially on a time token torpedo, the ideal is that you open up, volley at range 3, you spend 1 or 2 turns scrumming it up in melee combat, in like range 1 to 2, and then you've moved past each other to kind of set up for another round of jousting, and maybe on that turn you can actually shoot back a high-yield photon torpedo, but you can't because there's no rear arc.
Them's the breaks.
And it hurts, but I think the lack of rear arc and the fact that it doesn't give you anything more than the standard photon torpedo battle station to crit conversion kind of is what makes this still one of those secondary weapons that you don't ever actually see put into a build.
Leaves you scratching your head.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's how it leaves me. So, kind of a big meh from us?
I think that's the eventual conclusion on high-yield photon torpedoes.
We wanted to like you. We promise.
I'm a torpedo fan. Now, the interesting thing is going to be whether or not casual play rules this as stacking with the high-yield photon torpedo resource. I don't really think that it's relevant, considering that it can't be run in competitive. But that might be fun if you can roll a 7 attack die photon torpedo.
Yeah, it would be a lot of fun for the laughs. I will say that. You and I can talk about that in a campaign setting.
That'll be private.
When it's for the laughs, I have a tendency to let a lot of things go.
Let's talk, Dave. You and me.
So, all right. Next up, and we just have 2 more of these, so we promise we're almost done, folks. All right, Deuterium Tank. It's a 3-point generic tech. We always kind of go, generic. What can we do here? You may disable this card just before you move to treat a red maneuver as a white maneuver.
Love it. Love it. It's good. I want this on my ships. Stick it on there. I often find myself building fed ships and having a spare tech slot here or there, whether it's from system upgrade, slapping itself into a tech slot, or whether it's just from having more slots than I know what to do with on something like the Prometheus. Being able to just ignore the penalty for red maneuvers or perform red maneuvers when you've already got an ox power, that's what I like.
Yeah, this is especially good on the Excelsior class because that thing has 5 red maneuvers.
One of which is a full astern, which is fantastic when you've gotten a 180 degree arc like that. You can do a lot of surprise setups using that. And I was actually planning on running a penaltied Romulan helmsman recently to kind of abuse the Excelsior as just like standing in place. But
yes,
that didn't come to fruition.
Yes. As we like to say, this helps Fed shuffle. The Fed shuffle is the 2 forward, 2 back, 2 forward, 2 back.
Which is very fun. And if you've got a ship that can get free action economy or can get action slapped onto it and you can use your action to re-enable your deuterium tank, you can do that all day, every day, and not even lose combat effectiveness.
Yep. So there you go. I think we both find deuterium tank as a versatile card. Craig probably loves it more than I do, but I still find it intriguing.
I like Fed red maneuvers more than I should, and deuterium tank gives me a method in faction to not have to worry about them. Before, I was constantly using up my very valuable crew slots with Romulan helmsmen. Now I get to save my crew slots for all that fantastic Federation crew.
Mm-hmm. Which it truly is fantastic. Hey, speaking of those very valuable Federation crew, you walked right into this without even planning it. Delta Shift. It's a 5-point question mark card. This upgrade may be assigned to any ship without requiring an upgrade slot. That's fancy.
No, that's something. I'll give you that.
When one of your crew upgrades is supposed to be disabled or discarded, you may discard this card instead. No ship may be equipped with more than 1 Delta Shift.
So, this is Goval for 5 points instead of 1.
But no slot.
And no slot. So, if you're super taxed for slots and just can't figure out a way to put Goval, to put Centurion, to put Beverly Crusher, to put any of these characters that can allow you to do this exact same thing, I mean, I guess you can slap Delta Shift on there for what's probably going to be 6 points worth of faction penalty on top of the 5 Fed, but...
Wait, but maybe you already have all of those things and you want to do it one more time.
If you have a setup that needs you to do it one more time and Delta Shift is the only card for you, well, you don't even need a slot, so that's a plus on that column. But it seems like the applications for this are so few that I can't really see myself falling in love with this or even using it once.
I'm saying Gul Madred, Lee Nollis, Goval, Beverly Crusher, Delta Shift. That's 4 uses of Gul Madred.
4 successful uses of Gul Madred.
Yes.
And how many ships does your opponent usually run?
Depends on how many points we're running.
True. Generally, I see 3 opposing ships with a booster, and I don't really care about the booster's captain.
Now you can kill them all.
Yeah, I mean, you can. You can do that. Delta Shift looks really overcosted for the caveat that it doesn't require a slot.
Yes. And that's why they probably costed it how they did, is that they had to make it cost more because it doesn't take up a slot.
Because it is a direct upgrade to something like Beverly Crusher.
Right. Which costs 3 already, so is 4 really enough?
I would argue that they couldn't have done it at 4 because that would have been still too close to Beverly. 1 point is worth way more than a slot. 2 points is probably worth a slot. And so, I'm not calling it bad because what it does isn't good enough. I'm saying that I don't like it because it's not power creepy enough for me. And that's super selfish, but there you have it.
So what you're saying is you want it to also give you a crew slot.
Oh, can it please? I would slap this on a bioship all day.
Okay, now you're just being silly.
That if this gave you a crew slot, there is no end to the shenanigans to be had.
Put it on the Dreadnought, the Dominion.
Absolutely. Put this on anything. If it gives you crew slots, 5 points for crew reuse and a crew slot? Yes, please.
Yeah. Well, because almost nothing gives you a crew slot in this game. Short of like
Very
Picard
few
8.
usable cards give you crew slots. I do love my cryogenic stasis.
Yeah, that is fantastic. Alright, the last thing we need to talk about is the resource. Intercepted messages. 5 points. At the start of the game, place 5 evade tokens on this card. This is already sounding like general orders. During the activation phase, if an opposing ship that is within range 1 to 2 of one of your ships performs a scan, battle station, target lock, or cloak action from its action bar, you may choose to immediately remove 1 evade token from this card and place it beside your ship, even if there is already 1 there. You may only use this ability once per round, and then remove this card from the game when there are no evade tokens left on this card.
Yes, I think that is going to be my ultimate conclusion. Now let's work towards getting me there. What is this resource actually providing? It's providing 5 evade results. And
yes.
If you're being attacked and those evade results are being burned, that's equivalent to 5 points of durability. Now, if I could spend 5 points on a resource and get 5 points of durability onto my ships, that I consider to be a win-win-win-win-win. That is fantastic. That's 10 points for 5 points. That's value in my book. And so if I can use this effectively in game, if I can assume that my opponent is going to be performing target lock actions, which is going to happen, then I'm going to be able to use these and get free points of durability saved on my ships.
Yeah. Of course, that means that they don't overkill you, in which case your evade token is worthless.
You do actually have to be able to use this, but I think that if you build either defensively or with a big ship, like bio ships, or maybe a boosted fed ship, some Dominion fun things, even a scimitar, you can make very, very good use of this. And I think that unlike general orders, this gives you access to something that's very difficult to come across, and that is guaranteed safety. You are getting that 1 point of evasion no matter what happens. General orders give you a battle station that allows you to convert, but if your opponent's using mag charges, you can't convert any defense dice that you didn't roll in the first place. If you're going offensive, then you're using it for an entirely different reason than you'd use this resource. But getting those evade results is something that only this can really do, and it does it very, very efficiently if you, as the captain of the fleet, can put those evade tokens where they need to be. So it puts the onus on you, the controller, to get the value that this resource gives you. And I like that.
Yeah. I think what this leads you to want to do is to split up your fleet.
Absolutely.
So that if your opponent target locks you,
you can be very certain what they're doing.
Yeah. You know that they have to shoot you because you're the only ship they can shoot. That's tricky though, because ships don't always like to be isolated.
That's true, but there's still options like that one Klingon captain that kind of pulls off a taunt. There's options like attack replacement, my favorite option for which is the... So I'm thinking of using this with options like diversion, options like Julian Bashir, options that are already pulling in an attack and reducing its effectiveness. Now you're working on removing what could be 3 points of damage with either of those abilities, and that's where you're getting into Value Town. Throw it on something that maybe has like a tech like Data Node. That's a lot of fun.
Colo, certainly not a bad way to go with this.
Put this on the Dominion assimilated vessel, Data Node, Borg Queen 8. Now you're unkillable for the most part.
Equinox loves it.
Oh, everyone loves the Equinox.
You're not bitter at all there, Craig.
Who? Me? Pshaw.
But it is important to note, if your opponent's spending their actions re-enabling cards, or evading, or sensor echoing, they're not triggering intercepted messages. So there are things that they can do to not trigger this card. And granted, they have to have those options. But this isn't a for sure trigger every round.
That's true, and I'd also argue that this kind of falls into the camp of general orders in that it kind of asks that you have a lower captain skill if you want to be using this in first strike capabilities, because if you're going in with a higher captain skill, you're moving into that range 1 to 2 after your opponent's already taken all their actions and already set up for their big knockdown, drag out, opening alpha strike. So if you want to use this consistently from turn 1 of the engagement, you kind of have to use it on lower captain skill ships, which maybe isn't the best since you kind of want to be avoiding damage in the first place.
Yeah, but if anything, this is a card that helps swarm fleets to a degree. It doesn't make them completely viable, but it gives them a little boost.
I would actually go the exact opposite route, saying it's less useful in a swarm fleet where your opponent has multiple valid targets. Whereas if you're focusing on one ship like a dreadnought, now you're basically guaranteed to get all 5 of those evade results to cancel attacks that are coming in at one point or another. Reducing your opponent's effective attack options is what this resource thrives upon. And so if you're swarming, I think that's actually an anti-synergy.
I guess because it's still limited to 1 use per round, that is true.
There is the May trigger of only being able to slap 1 of these down every turn, and so if you can put this on use this with a dreadnought, you're going to be able to put 1 on, put another on next turn, put another on next turn, and assuming you've got enough survivability to reduce most of the damage, that's just going to be 1 extra point of durability saved every single turn. And for 5 points of saved durability is absolutely massive value. That's a 2-for-1 trade versus points on the ship itself.
Yeah, well, there you go. I think intercepted messages can see some play. I think it's a playable resource for sure. The question's going to be, in what context? Does it replace protocol? Does it replace tactics? Where does it fit in? I'm glad that it's out so that when some of those retire, this is still going to be here and people can make use of it. It's nice to have it in conjunction with general orders because getting extra actions of 2 good action types, battle station and evade, I think it's working well, giving ships more playability. And one thing that has happened in this game that a lot of people complain about is, hey, my stuff dies too fast. Well, here's a little answer to that.
You know what else this functions really well with? Edward Jellicoe. Now you're placing 2 evade results down next to the evade result you already took as your action. Now you're reducing the damage by 3, so I'm just saying, Jellicoe, you're scoring more points.
Oh, and then what you're telling me is that the action you do every round is then re-enabling your tech or weapon so that your opponent doesn't get to trigger their intercepted messages?
It gets better and better, Dave. As long as you can use Edward Jellicoe's to place tokens, you're not actually taking that as your action.
I don't want to live in this world anymore.
Long and the short of it is, I like this a lot more than I like General Orders, and I thought General Orders was pretty fantastic, so make of that what you will.
Okay. Well, I'm retiring.
What has the world come to, Dave?
I don't know. We'll see how much this truly sees play. I think it's good. I think it's a good direction for the game to go. I think there's different ways, and I think it's one more challenge people have to overcome, and that's also a good thing.
There you go.
So, more challenges in this game is a good thing, and more unpredictability is also a good thing. Because the last thing I want to do is kind of know how everyone's going to play before I ever show up to a tournament, because that's just boring. So, that is it for Tin Man and the Cairo. Go out there, play, have fun, win, get the Cairo, get this stuff. Even if you don't get the Cairo, go get intercepted messages. I think
go get Edward Jellicoe.
Yes, somebody will probably hand you Jellicoe on the way out because they don't care.
There you go. They don't see the value you see. They don't know.
But you know what? Have fun. Tin Man looks to be a really good scenario, and it's another in a strong line of these storyline scenarios that are very well done, and more kudos to WizKids for those.
Can confirm. It's a very interesting storyline, and while I think the objective point balancing needs some work, I'm very intrigued by the scenarios they've been putting out, and they seem like a lot of fun to play within.
Yes. So, that's it for us. Hopefully you haven't tuned out. If you stuck with us this long, thank you. And
thank you so much for listening along.
This is going to be our regular thing for OPs. Craig is trying this out for a bit and giving Nick a slight break, but
putting on the big boy pants and stepping up to the role.
He's got the fancy mic, so that's why his voice sounds smooth and sultry.
Buttery soft.
Now I want toast.
That's how you know it's wrapping up. Dave's getting hungry.
And I just ate before I started recording. Now I'm making myself sound like I'm always hungry. Alright, folks, that is it for us. We are done. We are out of here. We'll be back next month with Corbomite Maneuver.
Have a great day, everybody.
There we go.
Warp Core Breach is produced by Nick Norris and David Montgomery, with additional content from our contributors. Our computer is voiced by Corinne Donnelly.
Warp Core Breach is not endorsed, sponsored, or affiliated with CBS Studios Incorporated or the Star Trek franchise. All Star Trek trademarks and logos are owned by CBS Studios Incorporated.
All sound files are used under Creative Commons 3.0 by attribution. For specifics, please visit our Facebook page by searching Warp Core Breach Podcast. If you want to contribute to the show, let us know on the Facebook page, or you can email us at warpcorebreachpodcast@gmail.com.